This is the last session of the day, guys. So if Dilip, Ahmed, Ali, and Carreen could go a little bit quickly, it looks like Ali is presenting twice today. I think you guys should start. So Dilip, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I am.
Super, super. I'm so sorry about that. Looks like Ali is also able to share his screen.
I can't share the screen and start if you want.
So Ali, did Dilip already present? Is that why you're speaking? Or because I see you as maybe the third and fourth presenter.
Yeah, I am the third and fourth. Yeah.
Have the other two people presented?
No,
Okay,
don't see
so I think Dilip is supposed to present first. So
okay.
I said Dilip. Dilip, are you here? I'm so sorry. You guys probably lost your first presenter. What about your second presenter? Whoever, Ahmed, maybe you can.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So could I share my screen?
That'd be great. Thank you so much. We'll try to email you guys maybe the missing slide deck that Dilip had for us.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on the place you are. Today I will present, my name is Ahmed Foda, postdoctoral fellow at McMaster University. Today I will present our work titled A Resilient Battery Electric Bus Transit System Configuration. This paper is published in Nature Communications. My presentation will start by research motivation. After that, I will explain our overall aim in our research and in this contribution specifically. After that, I will discuss two battery electric bus system configuration models. And at the end, I will conclude by some insights from our research. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the contributions from my colleagues at Trip Lab and also McMaster Institute for Transportation and Logistics. Motivated by the high share of the transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions, it is often flagged as the first target for emission reduction. One of the main ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in transportation is electrification. Our research is mainly focused in transit. For transit, in Canada, we have a target for reaches 5,000 zero-emission buses in these 5 years, and also for all new sales after 2040 will be zero-emission vehicles. The reduction in greenhouse gas emissions after using battery electric buses in transit depend on the electricity sources. If we use renewable-based electricity, it will be almost net zero emission networks. If we use mixed electricity sources, the reduction will be almost 40%. Another feature making battery electric bus electrification or the transit electrification smooth is the transit system characteristics, which includes shared infrastructure, fixed schedules, and also fixed routes. However, there is a main limitation for using battery electric buses in transit, which is range anxiety. And also there is a need for sophisticated planning and optimization efforts because we need to decide the optimal location of charging stations, configuration of a charging station, charging schedule, reducing the impact on the utility grid, balancing contradictory objects and decisions, and also considering real-world factors and transit operational constraints. And there is also an additional point which should be considered in design, which is charging station failure. And this point we are focusing on in this research. The overall aim of my research is to develop a resilient and reliable battery electric bus system configuration that could be applied to any transit network to provide a precise planning and operation decisions to transit agencies, including infrastructure location, component sizing, operational energy management system, upfront and ongoing expenses, while considering real-world practices and operations. For this work, in this paper, we are focusing in constructing a resilient battery electric bus system that is robust against charging station disruptions while maintaining the same level of service of the transit network. First, we designed a generic battery electric bus system configuration model. This model optimizes the upfront and ongoing operational costs for the electrified transit system, including minimizing infrastructure costs, electricity time of use tariffs, peak power demand, and well-to-tank greenhouse gas emissions. This model will provide the optimal location of charging stations, optimal charger rated power and the number of miles in each charging location, and also the battery capacity for each bus. In addition to the infrastructure decision variables, we also provide the operational decision variables, including the charging schedule. This charging schedule will include all the needed information for charging, including where, when, how long, and how much for each charging event for every bus. This charging schedule will consider partial and continuous charging strategies. All these will be provided while considering adaptable. This model should be adaptable for general transit network, include utility grid cap to reduce the impact on the utility grid, and maintain the operational timetable for the transit network. This is a formulation of our generic model. This is the capital costs and operational costs. And these are constraints, including battery electric bus energy constraints, continuous and partial charging schedule, and charging station constraints. We applied this general model to Egville City. This transit network has 91 buses, and this is a configuration. This is a total annual system cost, battery electric bus fleet configuration, and the charging station configuration. Okay, this is good. This is a precise planning for battery electric bus system configuration. But what if charging stations are disrupted? The charging station could be disrupted because of electricity outage, component failure, or scheduled maintenance. What will be the effect on the battery electric bus fleet? How many buses will fail? What will be the service reduction in the transit system if charging station is disrupted? We provide some analysis to the design here. If in Oakville City, if one charging station disrupted, the service reduction could be up to 34% due to one charging station disruption. If two charging stations disrupted in the same time, the service reduction could be up to 58%. From this analysis, we proved that battery electric bus system is vulnerable to charging station disruptions, and we couldn't ignore the effect of electricity outage or all these reasons, and we need a resilient battery electric bus system configuration that is robust against the charging station disruption. Therefore, we developed a two-stage robust battery electric bus system configuration optimization model. This model will provide us with all the planning decision variables, including a charging station allocation, component sizing, a charging schedule. But in addition to that, this model will be robust against the charging station disruption. This model is formulated as two-stage, and this is the updated objective function and under a budget uncertainty set for the charging station disruption. We used the nested column and the constrained generation algorithm to solve this model, and we applied this model to Oakville City. As we see here in the first row, we can see this is the base model, which is the general model without considering a charging station disruption. And in the second row, we can see a robust model with K equal 1. K is the level of conservative. This model in the second row is robust against one charging station disruption. This means that the design will provide all the energy and all the buses will full functional if one charging station is disrupted. And the robust model K equal 2. The design will be robust against two charging stations disrupted in the same time, and all the buses will operate and finish all the scheduled trips. For example, what is the meaning of full functionality of all buses? Bus ID number 3 needs around 400 kilowatt hour per day. For robust model K equal to 1, this model is robust against one charging station disruption. This is the distribution of the energy charged in each charging location if no disruption. If one station is disrupted, the charging schedule will be updated and all the required energy will be charged in the other 3 charging stations. And this is also scenario in robust model K = 2. But in operations research, mainly we have something called no free lunch theory. We can't add more benefits without paying some money. So for the robust model or the resilient models, we have something called the price of robustness. If we use a robust model with K = 1, we will pay an additional around 3% additional cost. If we use robust model or design a robust model K = 2, we'll pay around 8% additional costs. This is a comparison between robust model K = 1 and K = 2 with regarding to the base model in terms of the different costs and different energy demand. From this research, we can conclude that this research ensures the optimal resilient battery electric bus system configuration remains fully operational even during the failure of charging stations. A resilient battery electric bus system design requires extra costs, but these costs are ultimately lower than the unoptimized expenses incurred after charging station failure. The price of robustness of K = 1 and K = 2 is around 3% and 8% respectively, but actually these additional costs will prevent a severe reduction in service if 1 or 2 charging stations are disrupted. This result shows that the cost of implementing resilient battery electric bus system is directly related to the conservative level, and determining this conservative level, which is K in our case, is particularly necessitates trading off between several factors such as budget and risk in each transit system. Overall, the model empowers the decision makers to strike a balance between costs and risks. Thank you so much.
And I think we have our real moderator with us now, Sanjana. Thanks for reading your emails. I just wrote her. Great to have you here. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Like I think we are almost back on track in terms of time. So that's great. So I would like to ask if anyone has any question for Ahmed regarding his presentation. You can either put it in the chat box, or if you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll try to unmute you. Okay, so it looks like we have a question in the chat box. So it says, if a base model is applied instead of a robust model in a charging disruption situation, will some vehicles just operate without charging?
Actually, if we use base model and there is a disruption in charging stations, we found that some buses will fail to accommodate this disruption and finish the schedule. So some buses will end up with zero energy level. So this will be like some buses will be out of service. Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, this is make the resilient model is necessary for design to be robust against this scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. I will email you. Yeah, I will also put the link here in the chat. Yeah, okay.
Nice. So if we don't have any more questions, I guess for the sake of time, we will move on to the next presentation. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for that nice presentation. It was really insightful. So our next presenter for the day is Ali Shehabeldeen. And Ali is a PhD student, researcher, and co-instructor at the Department of Civil Engineering, McMaster University, Canada. His research focuses on applying optimization techniques to battery electric buses transit system. His current research, under the supervision of Dr. Muataz Mohammed, focuses on forming optimization models for integrating battery electric buses within city transportation applications and large infrastructural projects. So Ali actually has two presentations back to back for this session. So he will start off with the presentation titled "The Effects of Battery Degradation on Electric Transit Systems Over 12 Years, More Batteries or More Chargers?" So I will request Ali to take it off.
Okay, I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
No.
No, not yet.
Can you see it now?
Perfect.
Hello everyone, this is Ali Shehabeldeen. I'm a PhD student at Northwestern University at Civil Engineering Department under supervision of Dr. Mataz Muhammad. Today I'd like to share the findings of our study entitled The Effect of Battery Degradation on Electric Transit System over 12 years, more batteries or more chargers. First, I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of my colleague at the Trip Lab and MITL. Moreover, I'd like to express our gratitude to NSERC for their generous funding. My agenda for this presentation starts with a brief introduction and background about battery electric bus optimization models and battery degradation, our study aim and objective, problem description and the challenges, the methodology used to address these challenges, and finally, I will present our results of applying the proposed model to a real-world transit network in Gold City. The current literature of battery electric bus planning and optimization could be broadly classified into two main groups. Single-stage models focus on determining the optimal component sizing and location of charging stations, or a combination without considering the dynamic change in the performance of battery electric buses over time, especially in terms of battery degradation. On the other hand, multi-stage model focus on the transition rollout planning from conventional diesel buses to battery electric buses. This table shows a brief literature on the battery electric bus planning and optimization. As you can see, previous studies determine the optimal battery electric bus system component sizing and the spatial allocation of the charging station. However, most of them focuses on a single stage planning. Furthermore, the authors who addressed the multi-stage planning were only focused on the rollout transition planning, without considering the impact of battery electric bus performance degradation during these transition plans. As we may know that battery electric bus battery degrades over time. And this is attributed to cyclic and calendar degradation. Cyclic degradation is associated with charging and discharging cycles as well as temperature. However, the calendar degradation occurs under storage mode when no electric current flows through the battery. In the literature, there are three main methods to estimate battery degradation: electrochemical, empirical, and semi-empirical methods. In this study, we utilized a semi-empirical one to estimate battery electric bus battery degradation. This table illustrates the literature regarding battery electric bus battery degradation. As you can see, the main differences between our study and their studies is that our study integrates battery electric bus degradation rates within the optimization process to address the impact of these rates on the optimal battery electric bus system configuration and operation throughout the usage life cycle, such as component sizing, spatiotemporal allocation of charging stations, and the optimal timing for battery replacement in a multi-stage horizon design. Given this previous research gap, the main aim of this study is to answer the main question: what is the impact of battery degradation on the optimal configuration and operation of the battery electric bus system through 12-year usage life cycle, including a special temporal allocation and capacities of charging stations, battery sizing, battery electric bus charging schedule, and battery replacement decisions. This figure describes our problem. As we can see, we considered a generic transit network that operates with battery electric bus under a given timetable and fleet size. And we need to determine the optimal operation and configuration of this network, including optimal allocation of charging stations, battery size, number and rated power of chargers, and battery electric bus charging schedule, while considering battery electric bus battery degradation in a multi-stage design horizon, and taking into account the electricity time of use, greenhouse gas emission, Also, we consider the battery replacement costs through determining the optimal timing for battery replacement, as detailed in the figure in the right. Therefore, the main objective is to reduce the total system cost, including capital and operating costs, such as infrastructure cost of the charging station, fleet costs, including buses and battery costs, battery replacement costs of purchasing new batteries and selling old ones, electricity time of use, and greenhouse gas emission intensity. This is subject to several constraints, including timetabling and updating charging schedule, battery energy levels, battery sizing and replacement, siting and sizing of the charging station, updating the charging infrastructure, such as adding new charging piles and increasing the capacity of the charging stations. Our methodology in this study is to address two main challenges. The first one is related to integrating battery degradation rates within the optimization model. And the second one is to develop a multi-stage optimization model that trades off multiple factors, such as battery placement, adjusting battery electric charging schedule, and or updating the charging infrastructure to accommodate battery degradation through our 12-year usage life cycle. To address the first challenge, we employed a surrogate-based, model-based space mapping algorithm to integrate battery electric bus battery degradation rates within the optimization process. As you can see, the idea is to develop a quartz model that maps the fine model in a linear formulation, and then this quartz model is improved through an iterative process until a termination criteria is met, reducing the error between the quartz and fine model. Following this approach, we accurately integrate the complex nonlinear battery degradation rates within the optimization process via a mapped linear model. After that, we developed a multi-stage optimization model that informs optimal battery electric bus system configuration and operation, while minimizing the total system cost and considering the impact of battery degradation rates at each stage. As you can see here, we sum over a set of stages respecting the net present value of each stage. This table shows the decision variable used in the model. As you can see, it is a combination of binary, continuous, and integer variables determining the optimal location of charging station, number of added chargers, rated power of a charger, battery size, battery replacement, and the decision related to adjusting the charging schedule. We applied the developed model to a multi-hub real-world transit network in Gulf City. The network featured 55 buses and 23 bus routes. Each bus follows a predetermined timetable. The model is tested over 12-year usage life cycle in 12 stages. As such, our model can inform the transit operators with the optimal configuration and operation decision at the beginning of each year. As you can see, the comparison between the proposed model and the base model without considering battery degradation illustrate that considering battery degradation rates within the optimization model significantly impact the battery electric bus system configuration and operation throughout the usage life cycle. As you can see, 6 buses required battery replacement at different stages. 2 more chargers are required at the beginning of year 2 and 8 to accommodate battery degradation. Also, the capacity of some charging station is increased, and the charging schedule is also adjusted to accommodate battery degradation. This map provides the optimal spatiotemporal allocation and the capacities of the charging station throughout the usage life cycle. Regarding the cost components, this table shows the breakdown of the total system cost. As we can see, considering battery degradation increases the total system cost. However, this cost ensures the feasibility of the battery electric bus system throughout its usage life cycle. This figure shows the optimal timing of battery replacement for the buses that require battery replacement. As we can see, the optimization model also optimizes battery degradation rates before and after replacement to inform the most cost-effective decisions. Additionally, this figure highlights adjustments in the charging schedule over time to accommodate battery degradation. Unlike the current practice of replacing batteries at 80% of its initial capacity, this figure highlights the importance of integrating battery replacement decision within the optimization process. As we can see, the bus in the second figure can maintain the circuit throughout the usage life cycle without battery replacement. However, the one above requires battery replacement at beginning of year 6. Also conducted a sensitivity analysis to address the impact of charging battery degradation rates and operation conditions such as energy consumption and time of use tariff on the final model outcomes. As you can see, the model behaves differently to accommodate these fluctuations by trading of multiple factor to inform the most cost-effective decision that minimize the total system cost. That's it. Thank you. And I need to acknowledge that this paper is published in Energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali. And we can start off with what we have in the chat box. So yeah, Professor, like bulb does seem to be quite tiny, and that's what I was thinking. Like, how would this model compare when we are thinking of like large systems, like say Toronto, which has like hundreds of buses and lines, and but we will get back to it later if we have time. Oh yeah, and exactly what Professor has mentioned here. But we can, yes, maybe Ali, you can share your idea and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, but we just for the data, we didn't have the data for this large cities, but we know that this will be costly for the model, but trying it depends on the data available. But I think this model can be applied for Toronto or Easton, but just the access to the data is the biggest one, it's the biggest deal in it.
Can I ask what the runtime was on your mainframe computer or whatever it was you used?
I think it takes around 2 hours to complete.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
it can scale up to some bigger stuff. Most people like to have a run, resolve within 24 hours. And are you on a mainframe, like a high-speed processor or a supercomputer or anything like that?
No, I just have a laptop. That's a laptop.
Fantastic, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the next one, we have another question on this increased cost from base model to proposed model is because of resiliency.
No, I didn't include the resiliency in. The resiliency is related to Foda. Foda started putting the resiliency in but the cost here is related to the battery degradation. Battery degrade over time, then this require more charging stations or as a capacity change or the battery replacement, or also the charging schedule, the fluctuation in the charging schedule. This increase charging cost for the operating cost.
Yeah, okay. And we also have a request for a link to your published paper. So if you can share that with everyone on the chat box, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, and we do have a follow-up, Ali. So the question is, why do you think that the cost has increased?
This is if I should just the slides again. And back to the table here. There is 6 buses replacement, battery replacement. This increase the cost. Also, we can see the capacity of the charging station increased also. And also additional charging pile is added and the fluctuation in the charging schedule. Then this impacted on the total system cost here. And this is a breakdown for all costs. and the increased percentage between the base model without considering battery degradation and the proposed model for considering battery degradation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so
And I
much.
will share the link for the published paper to just if one have the more question, you can see and
Yeah.
they can send me an email.
Okay,
Maybe.
sure.
Yeah.
It seems like Ahmed already shared a link to your published paper, but definitely if anyone has any more question, they can definitely reach out to Ali. So let's see. So for our next presentation, which is also the presenter will be Ali again, and this time his topic is the effect battery electric bus transit system optimization with battery degradation and energy consumption uncertainty. So Ali,
Yeah.
if you would like to take us off with this presentation.
Okay. Thanks. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. From the previous study, we did a sub-sensitivity analysis about energy consumption, and we noticed that it is crucial to consider the impact of uncertainties in energy consumption within optimization model, while considering battery electric bus battery degradation through the system usage life cycle. Therefore, this study focuses on determining the optimal electric bus transit system with energy consumption uncertainty and battery degradation. Here I'm going to speak about our aim and objective, methodology used to achieve this aim, our findings on a real-world transit network. Finally, I will conclude what we did so far. Our study aimed to develop a multi-stage optimization model that determines the optimal battery electric bus system configuration and operation, including optimal battery size, spatial allocation of the charging station, number and rated power of the charging piles, while considering battery degradation and energy consumption and uncertainty in a multi-stage horizon design. To achieve this goal, first, we utilized the multi-stage deterministic model developed at our previous study to minimize the total capital cost by determining the optimal allocation of charging stations and component sizing of the battery electric bus system, while considering battery degradation rates and replacement decision throughout the usage life cycle. Secondly, a two-stage stochastic formulation is developed to address the uncertainties associated with battery electric bus energy consumption. In the first stage, the model determines the optimal location of the charging station and the required battery size for each bus, while in the second stage, the model trades off multiple factors such as replacing batteries, increasing the capacity of the charging station, adding onboard chargers, and adjusting battery electric bus charging schedules to accommodate battery degradation and uncertain events. Lastly, an extensive formulation is developed, assuming discrete uncertain events to examine the model's performance under various uncertain degrees. Here we utilize the deterministic model of the previous study, as I described before. The objective function is to minimize the total the capital cost, including infrastructure cost of a charging station, fleet cost of purchasing buses and batteries, and battery replacement cost, including purchasing new batteries and selling degraded batteries. Also, the model is adhering to various constraints related to timetabling of battery energy-related constraint, charging infrastructure constraints, and battery sizing and replacement constraints. These are the decision variables. This diagram simplifies the idea of two-stage stochastic formulation. As we can see, the first stage determines the optimal allocation and the number of charging stations, as well as battery electric bus battery size, While the second stage trades off between adding more chargers, increasing the capacity of charging station, or replacing batteries and adjusting battery charging schedule based on the battery degradation rates and energy consumption random events. This is the objective function and the recursive function for the developed two-stage stochastic formulation. Then we converted the two-stage stochastic formulation to the extensive formulation that assumed discrete energy consumption events. This approach facilitates the solvability of the two-stage stochastic problem, considering various scenarios where S here represents as different scenarios and BS is probability of each scenario. However, this formulation is highly sensitive to number of scenarios, as increasing the number of scenarios increases the dimensions of the optimization model. We applied the proposed model to a real-world hub-and-spoke transit network in Belleville City. As shown in the figure, the network features 11 buses and 10 bus lines. Each bus follows a predefined timetable. The daily trips are divided into a set of sub-trips within fixed length. The model is tested over 12-year usage life cycle divided into 4 stages. As such, the model informs transit operators with the optimal decisions at the beginning of each stage, aka here is 3 years. This study assumed that the energy consumption uncertainty changes follows a normal distribution. 4% annual discount rate and 8% annual battery degradation rates are considered. This study also assumed homogeneous buses in terms of battery size. The results of the deterministic model illustrate the significant impact of considering battery degradation and energy consumption uncertainties. As we can see, 5 bus required battery replacement and 1 charger is added at the beginning of stage 2 or year 4 to accommodate battery degradation. Also, the figures show the remaining batteries level per bus at each stage, highlighting the importance of considering battery replacement decision within the optimization process. For the extensive formulation, we normalized the normal distribution into 3 parts with the given probabilities to address the impact of uncertainty related to energy consumption. After applying the extensive formulation of the developed two-stage stochastic model to the case study, the optimization model determines the optimal number and rated power of a charging station at the first stage, while at the second stage, the model behaves in different ways by trading of multiple factors to address the impact of battery degradation and energy consumption over time. The comparison between the deterministic and the stochastic model under the worst case scenario highlights the imperative rule of integrating energy consumption uncertainty and battery degradation rates while optimizing battery electric bus in transit system, and overlooking these measures during the optimization process could definitely result in suboptimal solutions. In conclusion, this study highlights the impact of both battery degradation and uncertain energy consumption on the optimal battery electric bus system configuration and operation in a multi-stage horizon design. This includes optimal component sizing and location of charging station, number and rated power of chargers, and adjusting the charging schedule to accommodate operational challenges over time. Also, the results demonstrate overlooking battery degradation and energy consumption uncertainty could lead to suboptimal operation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ali. Okay, so we do have a few questions in the chat box, but before we get on to those, I just wanted to ask, like, a common theme between both of your presentations is that the lifespan or the life cycle that you have considered is 12 years. And like, I was just wondering, what's your thought on like different life cycles, and have you actually tested any sensitivity from that end or not?
For the life cycle is the first study, we just didn't consider the energy consumption uncertainty, but in the second one, we considered the energy consumption uncertainty, and this increased the complexity of the model. Then in the second one, we just considered we reduced the complexity of the model by reducing the lifespan. Instead of using 12 years as 1 year by 1 year, we used 3 years at each stage. We take to give the decision before at the beginning of the third year, and each 3 years. That's the difference between the two models. The first model is a deterministic model, but the second one is considering the uncertainty related to energy consumption, and we use the stochastic to just own it. And there is a lot of methods that can be used, like robust optimization, but we use here the two-stage stochastic optimization.
Okay, thank you so much, Ali. So we do have a question from Meg, who is asking, do you have any sensitivity analysis on purchasing new batteries versus charging the batteries frequently by adding new charging stations?
This is a great question, but I didn't use sensitivity analysis and to test the difference between both cases. But the sensitivity analysis that we did is related to the time of use tariff, changing the time of use tariff and energy consumption, and also the impact of change the rates of battery degradation itself. But we didn't compare, but it can be considered. It's a good question here. The change between the charging more and the battery degradation. But the optimization model at the end of the day give us the best decision. It's compared between, I think the optimization model give us the best decision between the DC charging based on the decision it's considered in the optimization model, because we considered the charging cost and also the replacement cost. Then the decision from both of them is optimized based on the total system cost to minimize the total system cost. Then I think the optimization model considered the comparison between the two cases in itself.
Okay, so next we have a question from Jan Naidu, and that the questions, that if you can see them in the chat box, they are actually asking for more specifics about different aspects of your work. So to begin with, the first sub part of the question is, what was the chemistry of the lithium battery, LFP or NMC?
It's LFP.
Okay. And
the
then
the model that we used is based on the lithium ion LFP.
Okay. And the next one was that what temperature was the degradation done at?
Here we use a semi-empirical model that didn't include the temperature in itself. But there is other models that we will use in the next research that integrates the temperature within the degradation, and because we didn't have an experimental to get the relation between what is the difference between temperature and as you know, the experimental itself, we didn't have an app for the chemistry, and then we used the semi-empirical model. But considering the temperature is a crucial aspect, and it depends on the data that we have, and we didn't have data related to the temperature, what is happening with degradation if we change the temperature, but the temperature affects degradation. But in this model, this is a limitation in our model that didn't consider the temperature, because we worked in a semi-empirical model, not an exact empirical model that in the reality, but actually the temperature will affect the degradation.
Okay. And lastly, did the charging include fast charging? because in that case, degradation would occur quicker.
Yeah, but we use the fast charging, consider the fast charging because we consider the cyclic degradation. Cyclic degradation related to how how many times that the battery charge and how much is the charger power affect the degradation. This is included in our model, but the model didn't include the temperature in.
Okay. All right. So the next question we have is specifically on your paper. So on page 19, is there any background for selecting the mean and variance for degradation uncertainty? For example, based on a specific data set?
We use a specific data set that from our group did before in the energy consumption uncertainties.
Okay, and so from there you decided what mean and variance you would be using?
The mean is 1.5 and the variance is I think it is 0.15.
All right. Oh, so and like something else, it's like, is there a similar study or analysis on railway battery operated trains or locomotives? So you work with buses. Do you know of any study that worked with trains?
Actually, I don't know because we are focusing now on the buses, but I don't work in the rail transit. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, okay. So thank you so much, Ali, for your presentations today. So we will now move on to the final presentation of this session. Our presenter for this final presentation is Carreen Cardenas, and she'll be presenting on measuring pedestrian perception and behavior along urban streets during daytime and nighttime using eye tracking technology. A very interesting topic indeed. So, Carreen, if you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Great. Into presentation mode. Great. So yeah, as you said, I'm going to be presenting on some research that we have been doing looking at pedestrian perception and using eye tracking technology to kind of understand people's behavior from the pedestrian perspective. I'm a PhD student at UVA in the Civil and Environmental Engineering department, and excited to be with you guys today. So I'll start off with some of the kind of background and motivation, some of our methodological approach and technology that we used and what we're exploring with this new kind of mobile tracking technology. And then talk about some of our results and takeaways, and finish off with some of the limitations of this study and where we're headed with it. So since around 2010, the US has been experiencing increased pedestrian fatalities, and there's really this more of an interest in creating safe and pleasant spaces and infrastructure that is more pedestrian centered to address this. Although it's out of the presentation mode. It's interesting to note that the rise is mostly due to the rise in pedestrian deaths is tied to fatalities occurring at night specifically. And so that's the reason for this is still unknown. But when you break down the times of the fatalities by time of year, it's clear that it's not just due to like when people are traveling more around like 5 or 6 with commutes, but that it really has to do with this darkness piece and that being a contributing factor. So there's been some research about this from the driver's perspective, and there's been a little bit more limited research on the pedestrian perspective, and so understanding pedestrian behavior and how people are interacting with the built environment at night is really an important aspect in identifying the cause and hopefully contributing to some solutions. So yeah, walking is one of the most sustainable and equitable modes of transportation, but as we can see with the increasing fatalities, pedestrians represent some of the most vulnerable road users, and people often forgo walking when they feel that the conditions are unsafe. So having this safe and pleasant pedestrian infrastructure is really essential for promoting this form of mobility. So as people are moving through city streets, they're exposed to an array of stimuli, both visual and auditory, and attention is directed towards elements, including people, signage, vehicles, buildings, and other factors throughout in the environment. So decision makers often have a large influence on kind of what stimuli is present and what the conditions of the road and streetscape are. And when we're looking at the perception of safety, there's really two kind of main types. There's the objective safety, which really focuses on the number of crashes, and then the subjective safety, which is more the perception of risks that vulnerable road users are experiencing. And this research is really more focused on that second and being able to kind of have a little bit more preventative approach to pedestrian safety. That said, it's been difficult to measure and gain insight about the experience with the technology previously available. So this introduction of mobile sensors and our mobile eye tracking glasses has allowed for this kind of study to be developed, but it's still kind of in the relatively new stage, and we're figuring out the best way to use it. So the goal with the study was both to understand the differences in the psychological, physiological, and cognitive perception during the day and night, but also just exploring this technology further and the best way to use it to be able to do this kind of user-centric study. So these are the glasses that we use. They're Tobii eye tracking glasses to collect the data. They record a whole a bunch of different data. We're mostly focusing on the gaze and fixation data at the moment to gain more information about attention. But they also have this auditory, pupil, and inertial movement unit data, which we are also exploring for future research. They pretty much fit just like slightly bulkier regular glasses, but they have this battery attachment. Still, most participants found that the glasses were fairly comfortable when we asked in a survey. So in order to understand how eye movement, how we're using the eye tracking data, I'm going to do a little mini anatomy lesson. So eye movements are important for humans to gather visual information due to the high visual acuity being restricted to the fovea, a small area in the retina. And this is the area with the most cognition and processing going on. The visual acuity significantly decreases beyond the fovea. And so people kind of use eye movements to place fovea on stimuli that they're interested in kind of gaining information from. And the two main fundamental components of eye movements are the saccades and the fixations. The lab-based studies have focused more on fixations and saccades, but dynamic environments require inclusion of movements where cognition is still occurring, but not necessarily fixations. So with the mobile, so the main ones are this vergence, which adjusts to different distances. Smooth pursuit is when the eye is trying to pay attention to moving objects, and the VOR when the person themselves is moving. So accounting for these like stabilizing movements and not just fixations is important when using the real world eye tracking data. So after collecting all the data, the gaze filter through the Tobii software is a movement classification algorithm that classifies the gaze data and superimposes the fixation point on the video, which you can see here on the right as an example. And this velocity threshold identification can be set to researcher needs and is based on the standard thresholds that Tobii has set, with the fixations being 30 degrees per second, attention at 100 degrees per second, and then there's the raw gaze data. So a little bit about this study specifically. This is done in Charlottesville. It's a small city about 100 miles south of Washington, D.C. and home of University of Virginia. The focus was really on the daytime and nighttime scenario to see what the differences were, and it was all within subject and naturalistic study. This street was kind of identified as a priority corridor in one of the pedestrian safety action plans. And the disparity between the safety of the pedestrian mall that runs parallel and kind of the feeling a little bit more unsafe leaving the mall is often acknowledged by residents. So it's an interesting case study for studying this kind of thing. And along the route, there's a lot of different infrastructure types to evaluate how people interacted with different crossing points. So before when the participants came, we had everyone filled out a pre-experiment questionnaire with some more of the demographic data. We had them put the glasses and smartwatch on, calibrate the glasses, and explain what the route was. So this is eight blocks of walking total. We had them walk down the first north side of the street. Everyone had to walk that part and cross over. And once they got to the other side of the street, we opened it up to they could cross back. And the only instruction was that they meet us back at our starting point, this orange dot, to open it up to see kind of what their natural behavior was when we didn't have a predefined route. So we kind of had that first part that was predetermined, and then got a little bit more of an open thing. And so we had 63 participants, and they all did the experiment once during the day and once during the night, and we switched the order. So we tried to kind of account for any differences there with becoming more familiar with the route. And then we had everyone fill out a post-experiment questionnaire which addressed having them kind of mark any locations that they felt particularly safe or particularly unsafe, where they crossed and why they decided to choose that, to just gain a little bit more insight on some of the behavior and choices that they made. So we collected a lot of data because we're trying to understand, the focus is really on the eye movement data, but we also covered the physiological data, audio data, demographic data, the crossing behavior. A big part of it was the lighting conditions. And so we measured the lux level along the route for at different times of day to kind of get an understanding of how the impact that had. We also collected some air quality and temperature. So just to understand the conditions and if that had an impact. So this is a screenshot, an example of the Tobii Pro software. And so with the studies that are lab-based, it's a lot easier to know exactly what they're looking at with static pieces. But with this real world environment, we had to kind of do this remapping process of having to remap all the points of fixation onto the area of interest categorization, and then we were able to analyze based off of that a little bit more. So these were our categories that we came up with based off of literature review, and also just what we noticed people were paying attention to with some preliminary going through the videos and what the environment looked like. So we've got vehicles, transportation and crossing infrastructure we've split up quite a bit so that we could see if it was like, if people were looking at the stop signs, the kind of just the general pedestrian infrastructure, which was mainly like sidewalks, any kind of crossing infrastructure, and then the unlighted crossing infrastructure. And then we had lighting as kind of a separate category with people, the storefronts and other built environment elements, and then some other things like nature and miscellaneous infrastructure. Okay. And this is an example kind of all those categories and what that looked like in the software. So it just highlighted kind of what it was, and we had to reclassify that into the categories. Okay. So after the remapping, we did some initial analysis on the metrics to identify any variation. The first thing we looked at was the mean share of fixation duration. And the most notable change we saw was that the vehicles, lighted crossing infrastructure and general lighting features all had the greatest increase at night. And there was also kind of this notable increase on storefronts, which likely because a lot of the stores we noticed kept their lights on at night. So it was, again, kind of this lighted feature, even though the store itself was closed. And then we wanted to look at the total fixation duration as well. So a lot of what we're doing is exploring the different kinds of metrics and what's the best way to, which metrics are the best to use for this kind of work. And we wanted to, with this one, there are some differences in the data validity between the two scenarios because the glare from the sun caused the mean validity rate to be 63% during the day and 83% at night. So we had to do some normalizing data in this circumstance to compare. And other than pedestrians, most categories still saw the same trend of increasing and decreasing, but for the most part, yeah, the trends were similar. And then a big focus with this was that we had this relatively larger sample size for this type of study. We had with 63 people, and we wanted to really make sure the representation was across all age ranges. So it ranged from 20 to 88 years old, and having that be an important factor for making sure that all levels of ability are kind of included. And with that, we were able to separate that out. So we were working on some disaggregation and looking at the trends there. And interestingly, with this one, we saw there was a bigger shift to paying attention to the general infrastructure, which is like sidewalks and just looking down. There's a lot of comments with the qualitative analysis done with people's responses, and a lot of people mentioned the unevenness of the sidewalks, and I think all but one were in at least 40 up, and predominantly in the 60, 70s and 80s age ranges. So there's definitely a greater concern about that and being concerned about tripping. And then we wanted to add some extra context around the lighting. And so with the survey, we had everyone look at mark down locations that they felt the most safe or unsafe, like I mentioned before. And what we saw was there was really this connection between where people highlighted as feeling unsafe and there kind of being a lack of light or kind of lower lighting levels at nighttime. And so, yeah, this is our kind of a schematic creation of the walking route. And on the east end at night, that was where a lot of people felt the most unsafe. And there's, yeah, that connection there versus the places people found to be most safe had a lot more interaction with just like foot traffic and lighting up where there's more stores and less of the parking lot and kind of abandoned spaces. Okay. So yeah, so attention generally shifted to the lighted infrastructure and vehicles at night. There seemed to be this influence on visual behavior with the sense of age, but particularly what we're seeing right now is the attention paid to the sidewalk and those conditions and having to be a little bit more distracted potentially by those factors if you're more concerned with tripping. There's a strong connection between the lighting levels and perception of safety and visual behavior. And the perception of safety also was influenced. A lot of people mentioned things with the infrastructure conditions, interaction with vehicles, people, and then building design was brought up a lot. So further analysis is really needed to understand that connection between visual behavior and how it relates to actions and stated preference a little bit more. And we're working on further digging into that a little bit. But a big thing is being able to see the connection between how these mobile sensors can better understand pedestrian behavior, perception, and sense of stress when kind of evaluating these infrastructure alternatives, and providing a framework for future research to evaluate how design and policies kind of alter that urban experience, and hopefully be able to make the streets safer and more engaging spaces. So there are some limitations that we're hoping, some of them we're hoping to improve with future research. There's some that are just kind of general. Wearing the glasses made potential participants ineligible with the glasses. You can't. If people were able to wear contacts, they were able to participate, but otherwise it was a limiting factor in which participants we could recruit. There are some data privacy concerns with just having the glasses record out in the real world and capturing people that aren't necessarily part of the study, but we're not analyzing those people's behavior. Then there's some concern about the impact of the sensor's awareness of being studied, and if that's changing their behavior at all. And like I mentioned earlier, there's the data validity issues, which to a certain extent is just going to be part of this type of study. But there's also, I think, some potential for being able to understand with like glare is the biggest issue, and so understanding the lighting conditions that we could lead to kind of a higher validity rate for future studies. This type of study is pretty time intensive for data collection and analysis. There's also some conditional differences between different scenarios. With the real world environment, we can't control for that in the same way that a lab-based study could. And then there's some research bias of AOI interpretation of just as that was all manual remapping. And so all of these things could be addressed to a certain extent with applying computer vision, which is something we're working on to allow for larger sample sizes, improve the efficiency of analysis, and then kind of allows for normalizing. Oh, did I lose my presentation? Where did it go? This. Are you guys still able to see the? I can't. It disappeared on my screen.
We can see your screen.
Okay.
You're on the limitations and future directions
Okay.
slide.
Great. Let me go. I don't know where it went for me though. Okay, I might have to stop sharing and I'll re-share different. Sorry about this. All right. All right, and then we also, so one of the elements I talked about with the IVT attention filter, it still classifies as about 10 to 15% of saccades as attention, and so trying to kind of re-identify what that threshold is the most efficient is something we're working on, and making that connection between the different levels of cognition and fixation types, and then the connection between attention, perception, and cognition. So this is we're doing further analysis on this data to kind of understand what data works the best, and the best way to measure these elements. And then a big part too is that there's a lot of the VR virtual reality studies that have done, there's not been a lot of validating that the studies between VR and the real world. And so that's another thing that we're hoping to do. So we have the whole route that we did in the real world setting in a VR setting. So we'll hopefully be able to do some work with that. This research was supported by the US DOT Urban Mobility and Equity Center and the University of Virginia, and want to give a shout out to all the other researchers who worked on this project to get it where we were. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carreen, for this interesting presentation. And I would be really interested to see how your next research actually goes, where you compare VR with your actual real world setting. So before we go on to the questions we have in the chat box, I just wanted to ask, did you get a chance to take a look at, to take a look at what's the difference between, say, in terms of other demographic categorization? So I know you looked at age, but did you get a chance to look at, say, gender or?
So when we looked at gender, and at least across, just specifically gender, there weren't a ton of differences in the attention data. There is some mention with the qualitative analysis and the responses. There's some specific mentions of like feeling less safe in areas that women tended to bring up more than men. And that there is a more awareness around being a woman walking in the dark along the street. So that's not something that I saw a big difference in the fixation data, but we're hoping to do some more classification with that and digging into that a little bit more to get more of an understanding. We did some of the other demographic data. There's still a lot of room. One of the other researchers who's doing focusing on the crossing behavior, I think did notice some things with income being different with the choice of where people crossed. And some of that was impacted by like the familiarity with the route. So that was another question we asked. So there's definitely a lot of room to continue digging into this and getting more of an in-depth understanding of how those factors influence behavior.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have one question from Jan Naidu, and so the first part is, what, if any, was the relationship between socioeconomic factors between city blocks and the risk threshold perception?
So for the blocks themselves, or the people, let me see what if any was. So it was a pretty small walking route with only 4 blocks. So there wasn't a big difference between the blocks specifically. The differences would be more from where people were coming from. So that wasn't really something that we focused on, just because the blocks itself you get a lot of variation with the pedestrian mall that's just north of this route has the tendency to attract more of a high income population, but there are a lot of mixture with a large unhoused population as well. So it's not really by block, but there is a lot of differences in a wide range of factors there.
Okay, so the second part asks, did the study include mixed buildings, such as commercial versus single-family residence? So I guess it's more about your study environment and the the stretch of road that you considered. Like, what was the mix in there?
Yeah, so there were along the route, there weren't a lot of housing. It's a more commercial street area. Like the area is part of the downtown area, and there's some housing above some of the shops, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, so it's a lot of more shops. On one side of the northern part of the route has a lot of the shops, restaurants, some community buildings, and on the south side it was a lot of it's mostly parking. So there is the big parking garage and then 2 open lots. So there's housing kind of nearby, but it was mostly mostly a commercial area. Let's see, it's an urban area, but it's not super high density with like high rise. Charlottesville doesn't really have a lot of like high rise buildings, but it is the urban core. And yeah, so that's something we want to look at too, is with the difference between the 2 sides of the street, and further understand the difference there, because it's a very different built environment surrounding.
Okay, and so the final part of this question is, was there any correlation found between transportation infrastructure safety assets, such as overbridges, sidewalks, and the perceived visual risk?
Yeah, so we didn't have any overbridges. That is something, so there is a lot of the like sidewalks and crossing infrastructure. So with each intersection, there's a kind of different, there's some that were signalized, some that were like had a stop sign and a crosswalk, but no signal. And so that's another form of the analysis that we're looking into, is the different types of infrastructure, and especially with the crossing infrastructure and how that impacted the visual behavior and perception of risk. So we just based off of some of the survey responses, the signal is definitely the signalized intersection was definitely the intersection that was chosen the most to cross back over. And there's definitely some comments about feeling safer there because of that. And so yeah, we're digging into that a little bit more as well.
Okay. And the final question we have in the chat box asks about, does perception deal with other issues such as like safety or crime, first floor city block opening, vision angles, street dirtiness, etc.? So the general perception of safety.
Yeah, that definitely came up a lot with the survey responses as well. And so we're trying to make that connection with the visual behavior metrics and how that connects to some of those elements, because there were quite a few mentions of how along one of the streets there's the parking garage, and they had it in kind of an inlet, and people felt less safe with that kind of building design, because quite a few people brought up that it felt like there was more space for potential crime, where people could be hiding, versus the streets that the active building front. And there's definitely mention of concerns about crime, some mention of like, yeah, with some of the areas where it was, again, it was kind of in the darker area, but there, if there's a lot of garbage or something like that, there a few people mentioned that as not necessarily the unsafeness, but that it was something they noticed. And so we're working on making that connection with the attention and fixation data, and kind of how that relates to the other the perception of some of those other elements.
Okay, thank you. That was really, really insightful. So, and do you happen to have published this work somewhere?
Not yet. We have just recently submitted it for review. So I can provide that information when we know more, when we hear back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. This was really interesting, Carreen.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session. I'd like to thank everyone who joined this session, and apologies again for the delay in starting and for the switching of the Zoom link. But thank you very much for those who showed up, and we got some very interesting questions, and we learned about some interesting studies, and we look forward to reading more about your work. So thank you. And yeah, if anyone does have any question, you can go ahead and ask. If not, then we will end our session here. Okay.
Thanks, Sanjana.
Thank you so much, Jason.
For taking on the moderation at the last minute.
Yeah, thanks. No, I was just worried that because of the switch, there might not be a lot of people showing up, but it's really encouraging that we did end up getting a good turnout, right?
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Thanks. It was interesting. And I learned about some studies which is not in my field of expertise, but these are very interesting.
Great.